Fans, welcome to a very special edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and we're very pleased tonight to have on in her first interview post Dark Side of the Ring, the daughter of Maniac Matt Bourne, Doink. That would be Teagan Osborne. Teagan, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Just amazing. Thank you very much for coming on. Before we get into the logistics of the Dark Side broadcast and some of the questions that are raised from that, can you just explain what it was like? I know the Dark Side's episode focused a little bit on your experience growing up in the house of a famous, accomplished territorial wrestler, but if you could expand on that a little bit for the fans, I think they'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so growing up with Doink the Clown as your father was interesting. I remember as a little girl, we'd be walking down the street and people would stop us. People would be like, "Is it real? Is wrestling real?" And he'd be like, "Don't ask me that question." Also, I mean, I really never realized the significance of who Doink the Clown was unfortunately, until my dad passed. I was really never a big wrestling fan because, I mean, I knew it was fake. So I really didn't get into it, even though my dad did actually do it, obviously. I only watched it when he came back for the anniversary. I forget what the episode was called, but he came back to the WWE, did the anniversary episode. As Doink, I watched it on demand because he did a little sign to me and my brother like this to say hi. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy now that I'm going to be 26 years old next month. And my dad was a legend. I mean, when I look back on all the things that we've been through in our lives, and when he would travel, and when he, even though he was fired and never really did Doink like that again, except for the anniversary episode, I mean, my dad was the shit. So it's like, I wish it kills me today to know that I can't say that to him, because I feel like he should have heard it more often than he did, because he had his moments, he had his negative moments, but nobody's perfect, and that humans are never perfect. So, but yeah, I wish I could go back and tell him that. But overall, it was interesting. I mean, he'd show up. I used to play powder puff in high school. He would come home. It was once a year, one game. He would come home once a year. And the one year he goes, "I'm coming up as Doink." And I said, "Dad, don't do it. Don't." I was like, "I don't want to be embarrassed." He goes, "Watch me." He showed up, and I kid you not, he shows up as Doink, okay? Cops have to be there, like the policemen, because this game's on the football field. I'll never forget this until the day I die. All I know is the game stopped. Everybody turned their heads to look at Doink. And I'm like, "Oh my God, my dad's here." But like back then I should have been like, "Yeah, my dad's here." But like, you're 15 and you think that's embarrassing. So, but yeah, hopefully that answered your question. I kind of went on a tangent there, but
Did you look into, or after you became aware of the phenomenon that he was as Doink, a lot of us older vintage wrestling fans really remember Matt Bourne from his time in the territories, and particularly Portland wrestling, which I'm a huge fan of. Did you familiarize yourself with his body of work pre Doink?
yes. And I'm not an expert. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it, but I did look into it, especially for the Dark Side of the Ring episode. I wanted to prepare myself. Just because I knew I'd forget some stories. I mean, it's been 10 years since I've seen my dad. So, but I mean, my grandpa was a professional and in Portland, and he was very well known there. And just looking back at it, like my dad, it was just in the blood. Um, that's what my dad did. My dad actually wrestled for his high school, like real wrestling. He had a full scholarship to Oregon State, and he turned it down because he wanted to wrestle like in WWF. And my grandpa was like, "Matt, don't do it. You're going to get caught up in the business." And my dad was like, "I don't care. I want money." So that was his goal. And you know what? He was good at it. And if the wrestling business wasn't the way it was, I think he would still be here today if the drugs weren't involved, unfortunately. So
Yeah, he was, which we'll touch on in a bit, but he was definitely in an era when the wrestlers really partied hard and were on the road a huge amount of days out of a year, which the travel takes its toll on the body big time. A fan is asking, Mike D is asking, hold on, here we go. The action figures that are currently out, are they of your dad or Ray Apollo, who was, I believe, the third Doink? Do you have any of those collectibles?
Are they, if they're referring to the WWF ones, I would be able to tell by, you know how they have the picture of the real person in the packaging?
Hmm.
I would
Hmm.
be able to tell if it was my dad or not, just by the way his chest and his hands are.
Hmm.
Actually had a fan after the show aired send me a Mattel, I think is the brand, a Mattel Doink the Clown version, and it's not like, it's like, I think that's the brand of the dolls. That looks exactly like my father, like with the way they set it up. But the Doink that they might be referring to, whatever they sell on eBay right now, I think that is my dad, just because I see the picture behind the doll, and that's my
Hmm.
father. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always found, despite Steve Kern and Ray Apollo, that when your dad had the makeup on, you could tell it was Matt Bourne.
Yeah.
So moving to the dark side of the ring and that series, how was it that you were first approached, or how did the information come to you that the producers were looking to do an episode on your dad?
Yeah. So I never heard of the show. I have, so one of my coworkers, his name's Dave. He told me, he goes, Teagan, did you ever watch this show, Dark Side of the Ring? I'm like, no. He goes, it's about wrestlers, about the way they passed, and because at work you get to know people, you talk, and they knew the story a little bit of how my dad died. I gave him a little bit of background, but I didn't go into detail. And he went, I think it would be good. And I'm like, let me watch one. And I watched, which one did I watch? Gino.
Hernandez. Yeah.
Yes, I watched that one.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I can see this going a decent way if they make it to where my dad doesn't look like a bad person, because that's what I didn't want. So what I did, I was just bold, and I just reached out to Evan Husney and I said, hey, I'm Doink's daughter. I think this would be a good episode. And he said, actually, it's funny. We've been trying to find his family, and we haven't had luck the past couple of years. He goes, I'll call you in a few. And I told him the little bit of a gist of the story, and the rest is history. So,
Now, after the producers made contact with you, and it was set in stone that they were going to do an episode on your dad, what was your level of involvement in terms of, given your concerns about how he would be portrayed? What was your level of involvement in terms of the end product, or were you just interviewed and they put it together? Or were you given any sort of outline as to what the episode would look like?
so I wouldn't say I got a specific outline. I Whenever I met them in person, I mean, they treated me and my mother great. I mean, they were great people. I was there first alone. We interviewed for about 4 hours. We went to lunch, and then my mom came, and then we interviewed the rest together. But you know, when I told them in my interview, like, there's obviously stuff that we interviewed and it wasn't in the show, and I'm like, I just want people to know that, like, my dad did make mistakes, but that was my dad. So what you guys see and what you guys think that you know about Matt Osborne, you don't know. Like, because yeah, because people today, even after the show aired, they're like, hey, Matt was a deadbeat dad, wasn't around. I said, he actually was around. That's the thing. Like, he was. Why do you think I know all these things about my dad? Because I was around him. My brother knows more, because me and my dad butted heads, and my brother didn't do the show. But like, back to the dark side, because I went on another tangent. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
They didn't, they asked what me and my mom wanted out of this. They specifically asked us that, and we told them. We said we want Matt to look like a good person, even because he was. We didn't want to make it up. You can say the bad things he did, but you don't make him look like a bad dad. That's what we didn't want. And I feel like made that happen. Even after the show aired, I had one of the producers that no longer works at Dark Side of the Ring. He texted me that was on this specific episode, and he said that was the best episode I've ever produced, and I'm so happy that you're happy. Like, that's the type of people that they were. So
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, one of the criticisms of the series by the wrestling media, so to speak, or the IWC, is the fact that it was some of the prior episodes have either been, you know, one lopsided or another. But I found the portrayal of your dad probably due instrumentally to your involvement in it to be quite balanced. I mean, it didn't sugarcoat. Any of the demons, as we say in the wrestling business, that he had, but it was also balanced, and you really got the sense that he was a dedicated family man and loved his kids.
yes, yep, he was, and he I will never forget when he came to visit. Even if him and my mom weren't together, he'd stay at our house. He always wanted to wake up and go to church at 6 a.m. I'm like, Dad, no, I'm not waking up, dude. I'm 14. I'm not waking up. Sorry. He'd make us breakfast. He goes, this is what life's about, making breakfast for my kids, making dinner and hanging out with my kids. And we'd go to the mall and shop. We do, like, it was just, I got to see the side of him that people think that he wasn't. And he made his mistakes. Last time I saw him, it was right before he died. His ex-girlfriend pissed him off. He had a couple drinks. When Matt has a couple drinks, it's not just a couple, it's probably the whole liter. Okay. Mm-hmm. He drank, him and my mom fought, and then he left. That's how my dad left the last time I saw him. And like, what we made up at the end, right before he died. It was the night before he died. He called my mom. We all apologized to each other, and then he died the next day. It's just like, he had his moments. I've seen him have his moments. For example, I remember as a little girl, me and my brother were walking down. We live in a really small town, so you can walk places. We were walking to one of these toy stores, and this guy ran through the red light, and he almost hit me, my dad, and my brother. And my dad, in the show, they talk about how strong he was, and he was abnormally strong. And they didn't put this in the episode, and I told this story. But this truck was crossing us, and my dad took his bare hand and said, "You motherfucker." And he hit the back of the truck, and I swear to God, I was 10 years old, the truck fishtailed down the fucking road. Crazy. And it's just like, and people might not want to believe that, my dad was tough, but he was. Like, even if it was a little bit of drugs and I'm doing it, what other human being that could take, a little bit of coke and be that strong? My dad was abnormal in a good and bad way, but so.
Yeah, clearly he, right up into his later years took conditioning very seriously. And for a guy who carried about walking around 250, he was an incredible athlete and very, very agile. I wanted to ask you though about a couple of the things that appeared in the episode that are somewhat controversial in terms of people disputing them, not disputing them. The first being that story about the bar fight between B. Brian Blair, the Killer B, and your dad. That sounds, I don't know. When I first heard it, I've never been in a bar fight that's lasted 19 minutes, and I've worked in bars, so I found that one to be a bit of a head scratcher. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe it. I never had my dad tell me that story because he never liked to tell stories like that to me, because I'm his kid. But I believe it. Number one, I believe it is because he has a scar on it. He had a scar on his lip right here. It's obvious. Something happened with his lip. Another thing is, I believe it lasted 19 minutes because when my dad, if you would knock my dad down, and I use this analogy or metaphor, however you want to call it, he's like Michael Myers. He pops back up. No matter what. You could shoot Michael Myers, cut his neck off. He's popping back up. And that's what my dad did. I remember my mom telling me a story. I think it was after I wasn't born yet, but my dad that's when my dad beat my mom up really bad, and she was in the hospital in the story, in the show. And my dad's dad, or my mom's dad, wanted to. I never got to meet him. He passed before I was born, but he was like, "I'm gonna kill him, Michelle. I'm gonna kill him." And then she finally was up walking. They were going to get her stuff out of the house, I believe, and my dad showed up, and she looked at her dad and went, "Dad, he's gonna kill you. We gotta go." And my grandpa apparently knocked him down the steps. My dad was down for like 2 seconds, popped right back up. Like, those are the stories that I hear and that I know are true. Even with him picking up the back of the car. I was just talking to someone the other night. I was at the bar over the weekend, and someone said, "I watched the show." He goes, "I was there that night. I saw your dad pick that car up." Like, this shit, we can't make this shit up. Like, why would we? What? We didn't get paid to do this. You know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't make that up. But yeah, I mean, I believe the 19-minute bar fight, 100%, because he just keeps going until he gets what he wants. Because nobody can beat Matt Osborne up, and that's how it was. You don't fuck with him unless he doesn't start it, but he ends it. So that's how that goes.
Yeah, that's quite a story, along with the lifting of the car. But I believe that for sure, given how obviously strong he was. Um, Wanted to talk about Jim Duggan and a couple of the things that he talked about in the episode. One being the fact that he was regarded as a bully by some of the wrestlers, and that he was overly stiff in the ring, or rough. And I saw recently a clip from about 2010 or so, where it seemed that over the incident in Mid-South Wrestling, where your dad came to the aid of Duggan, who was being attacked by a fan, and he kicked the fan's eye out, et cetera, that he still harbored a little bit of resentment towards Hacksaw. First of all, I know that's a lot to unpack, but is that your understanding? And what are your thoughts of Jim Duggan's comments in the episode?
I can tell Jim Duggan's a good man. I don't know him. My dad, I never heard my dad talk about him. Like I said, my dad didn't like to talk about stuff like that around his kids. But my dad, what I do know is he holds grudges. So the fact that he came back however many years later when they were in the ring and said whatever did not surprise me. That's one thing with my father that I can't say that he was good at. I mean, but near the end, he was going to church. He started forgiving. And, I mean, I've seen that side of him too, for forgiveness. But when it came to his career, I think he was just resented Duggan because my dad got fired. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got out of that story was Jim Duggan was able to wrestle again, I think is what I heard from that. So that does not surprise me. But when Jim Duggan called my dad a bully, okay. What I wish Jim Duggan would have said was bully when it comes to working. Because when my dad knew he was good, and I'm not saying he was the best in the game, but he was one of the best. I don't know who the best is. I'm not saying anybody's the best, but my dad was up there. His technique and his skill was phenomenal. If anybody compares to him to even guys today, everything he did looked real. He was so technical about everything that he did. And this brings into my point. I'm going to go on a little segue here. I've seen controversial things people have commented when I talked about Steamboat. And I laugh because I see how people can see that I said Steamboat sucked, but that's not what I meant. Like, the way that I was asked the question was, "Hey, who you watched WrestleMania 1 or 1?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Well, who wrestled in it?" I'm like, "Oh, it was my dad, wasn't it?" "Yeah." And then I said before, and they didn't put this in there. I said, before I start talking about my dad, no offense to Steamboat, but my dad was pretty damn good. And I meant that as, I know Steamboat was great, but you're going to realize I'm not going to talk about Steamboat right now. I'm talking about my dad. Like, it wasn't like, oh, no offense to Steamboat. Steamboat sucks ass. That is not what I meant at all. So I just want to clarify that. Now, sorry, my dogs are playing around me when I'm on the phone, of course. But yeah, like, when I kept reading those comments and then people were like, I couldn't even believe anything that came out of her mouth after that. All right, people, think about it. I did not mean it like that. I didn't even know Steamboat personally to even say he sucks, you know? Like, and I'm not unintelligent. So when it comes to me speaking out loud, that is what I meant. But anyway, back to Duggan. Yes, I think he could have said it better when he said my dad was a bully. But I know my dad was a bully when it came to work, because my dad loved what he did and he was passionate about it, and he didn't want anybody to be better than him, and he wanted to be the best. That's where I get kind of my drive at. I'm like, I want to be the best. I'm so hard on myself at work, and I want to up everybody. But then I realized, okay, Teagan, you're going to kill yourself if you do that. Everybody's going to hate you. And I learned from watching what my dad went through. So,
well, and it can also be said that coming as a second generation talent and having a history of, the wrestling business, that he was snug to protect the integrity of the business, and that can be misinterpreted. I know I have a friend who had the pleasure of wrestling. Well, there you go. That
he's
was a high
insane.
flyer.
I have 3 dogs. They're insane. I'm going to have to lock him away.
That's all good. That he was snug, but definitely not, overly stiff. But Mike is saying when Matt beat Crush at WrestleMania, it was awesome, and is thanking you for the interview.
Oh, you're welcome.
As I said, a lot of fans are interested in hearing what you have to say. One fan in particular asked me to ask you on social media your thoughts on his entertaining character as Big Josh in WCW with the axe handle.
So what are my thoughts on my dad doing that?
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that incarnation of him as a wrestler?
I thought it was different. I thought, and I'll be straight up honest with you guys. I mean, I didn't watch a ton of matches with him as Big Josh Lumberjack, but he I feel like it showed a side of him that nobody got to see. I mean, he carried the 2 big bears. I think it had some truth to it as well, because my dad was like a Big Josh, the lumberjack. Like, that's what I saw him as. But I think it was a good thing for him. I feel like I think it just proves that he can pull off anything that's given to him, to be honest. Mm-hmm. He looked like he was Big Josh Lumberjack. Like, like with The Rock, or, I love The Rock to death. John Cena, like, yeah, they're who they are, but, like, I don't know, like, maybe I'm biased, but when I watch my dad wrestle, man, like, I believe it. Like, I don't know. But.
And he certainly did have some good matches in that persona, as Mike pointed out. Big Josh versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, Greg the Hammer Valentine and my dad were good friends, so it makes sense why they were good, because they worked good together. So,
So moving on to the WCW deal coming to an end, and your dad contacting WWF to see if they had anything for him. I know in the episode it's touched on how the Doink gimmick came about by a comment from Road Warrior Hawk, or I kind of found this confusing. Maybe it's just me. They were saying that, but then they were saying that they had this idea of an evil clown germinating with creative services. What is your understanding of how your dad found out about this plan, and what were his initial thoughts about what was no doubt an unconventional, to use one term, gimmick?
Yeah. From my understanding, I know that Vince came to my dad with this idea. Now, it wasn't set in stone how this clown, and all we knew was the clown was going to be a heel and it was supposed to be evil. That is all my dad knew. Now he said, if you want to come back to the WWF, this is what you got to do. You got to make this work. And I remember my dad being excited. I mean, I wasn't alive yet, but he told me this story. He was excited because he knew he could do well. He studied so many things. He studied the Joker. And I forget the original Joker. It always goes over my head. I forget the name.
Cesar Romero.
Yeah. So he studied that. He also, and my dad was goofy naturally. He would just do random stuff. He never cared about what anybody thought of him. He would be loud in public. He didn't care. And I'm kind of like that too, unfortunately, but it's a good and bad thing. But and I'll just give you an example. My brother, it was when I still lived with my brother. This was years ago, probably 9 years now. And I was sitting in the kitchen and I was eating Burger King, and my dad loved Burger King. Don't know why, but he loved it. And I was eating Burger King, me and my brother, and I said something like, ooh, Burger King. I just did something so weird. And my brother went, oh my God, that just reminded me of Dad as Doink. That was weird. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. That was just Dad naturally. So my dad it was just so easy for him to pull it off because he was so good. He was a good actor. And, some people probably was like, oh, this is perfect for him. He's fucked up. He's just naturally jacked up in the mind. And you know what? Everybody's jacked up in the mind a little bit, but I'm not saying my dad wasn't like some evil man that wanted to kill you all the time. That was the last thing. He was a teddy bear. He was just goofy, and he was passionate about his job, which made Doink easy. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And boy, did he pull it off. And I think you answered the question as to why he pulled it off so well, is that it was somewhat of an extension of his personality, and he was gifted in terms of portraying these characters.
He was. And he was one thing also about my dad that made things easy for him is he was a very intelligent man. He had a full ride to Oregon State, for God's sake. He had good grades. He was very intelligent. People don't realize that about him because they just think about the drugs and the alcohol. But behind all of that was a very intelligent, put together man that loved life, loved his kids, and loved his job, and just the drugs and the business took over it. And you know what? You can think, and I don't know Vince McMahon. I don't know how any of the history behind of how he did what he did, because I never cared to know. But if he cared a little bit more about his workers, maybe the drugs would have never been that big of a problem. Think about that.
Yeah, and most definitely, again, when we're talking about your dad's era, that was a far different time in the business when, now, to my understanding, the individuals that work for either WWE or AEW spend a lot of time, playing video games and much more sedate activities. But definitely in the 80s and 90s, that was a significant problem. I have a fan here echoing a question that I also got on social media that I wanted to ask you about. Do you personally have any thoughts on Bam Bam Bigelow and the information that, or I don't want to call it an urban legend, but the conception, I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, that he was responsible for your dad's firing from the Federation at the time?
He was responsible for it. And God rest his soul. I don't want to talk smack on Bam Bam, but Bam Bam was a snitch. They were together the night that my dad died, oh Lord, that he got fired. And they were smoking weed or doing coke, one or the other. And Bam Bam turned around as soon as he was done and told Vince. And then Vince fired my dad on the spot. I remember when Bam Bam died, and my dad said, but my mom said, oh, Matt, Bam Bam died. And he went, I wish I could say I cared or not, but he got me fired. So that's all I know. But I'm not going to say I disliked him because I never knew him, but I know what he did. So, but I think he has an episode coming up tomorrow. I'm curious to see if they're going to mention anything. I'm surprised they didn't mention anything in my dad's episode, because they brought this up and me and my mom both answered the same. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Bam Bam must have been jealous, because I know my dad was a little bit better than Bam Bam. That's something I can say. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they'll use that footage in the Bam Bam episode. Did your aside from jealousy, it's strange that you know, they being friendly and partying together, why he would do that. Did your dad have any idea why? Just scared for his spot, or
No, I mean, I don't remember my dad saying anything why Bam Bam would have did that. And, now that I look back on everything and I think about Jim Duggan's response about him being a bully, the only thing I can think of is Bam Bam was like, you know what, Matt, you did me wrong in some sort of way. So I'm going to, even though I just did this with you, fuck you. I'm going to tell. Like, that's the only thing I can think that happened is it was out of spite in some way.
a fan is commenting here. The story, according to Matt from Boston Wrestling, that's the interview I was referring to earlier, was that Bam Bam saw him, Mike McGurk, the ring announcer, or was she a referee? I can't remember. And Sherry Martel smoking pot in the hallway of the hotel, and then told the office.
Yeah, no, Bam Bam was with my dad. My dad might have said that to, I don't know why, but the story that my dad told my mom and the family was he was with him, and he couldn't believe that he turned around and did it. So
yeah, no doubt. So when it came to pass that Steve Kern was introduced, and it looked like the gimmick would be diluted, so to speak, did your dad ever speak on knowing that he was being phased out, or did he ever have a clue as to that, or any recollections?
He told this to my mom. He said he felt like Vince was setting him up for failure whenever Steve Kearns came out there on that match. He didn't know why. He had a gut feeling. And I mean, he was right. I mean, look what happened. Vince and my dad always had a weird relationship. I know that Vince did like my dad in a way because he was good at what he did, but it was just the decisions that my dad made didn't make Vince's business look good. So I think that's where they butted heads and didn't get along. But yeah, I mean, I think Vince probably had something to do with it, because if you think about it, you bring Steve Kern in there, like he wanted to probably test my dad and see how is he going to act, because my dad in his head probably thought he thinks that anybody can do this, and because I have a face paint on and a whole suit, but that's not the case, and it really wasn't. You notice, I mean, after my dad got fired, they still try to keep it. They did Dink, they did this, and they could never keep up with it because no one ever did it as good as him. And some people may say, the trolls, well, I never noticed it wasn't Matt. Okay. That's not true. It's like, it's so obvious. And I may be biased, but I get it's obvious. I can even tell in the show, they didn't do that. They didn't show it, but when me and my mom did the interview together, we were like, yeah, we can always tell when it's Matt or when it's Steve Kern or Ray Apollo. And they're like, how? And we're like, we just know. So they tested us. They would pull up a Doink picture. They're like, is this Matt? And we're like, nope. Is this Matt? Nope. Like, you can just tell by the neck, the hands, even the face, in the mouth, in the eyes. Yep. My dad had very small eyes, and I have those eyes. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think he did that on purpose. I know my dad had good intuition, so he knew.
One of the fans is asking about your dad's thoughts on, I guess the wrestler that would, although there were, Brooklyn Brawler, Lombardi, and Kern, but Ray Apollo, who carried the gimmick on, and I think still does to this day.
So what are they asking?
Just what your dad's thoughts were on Ray Apollo portraying the character.
Oh, I mean, I remember my dad would laugh when people even just bring up Dink. Um, who did Ray Apollo do Dink, or was that Steve Kearns? I can't remember.
I think it was Steve, and the fans will probably correct me on this, but I think it was Steve Kern first who did the second Doink, followed by Apollo afterwards.
Okay. I mean, I just remember he never really specifically said, "Oh, Ray Apollo sucks." Like, I never heard him say that. I just remember if people brought up times after he was Doink, he would just chuckle and be like, "Huh, yeah, that wasn't me. Yeah, no, don't ask me. It wasn't me." Like, because he knew he was good. So, I mean, Ray, if you look at what Ray Apollo looked like and his facial expressions and the way that he did things, it was just, it was not even on par. It just really wasn't.
Yeah, a fan has spoke up, which I kind of knew in the back of my head, but Dink was the little dude wrestler,
Yeah,
the
but
small guy.
was he with Steve Kearns or Ray Apollo?
I think he was with Steve Kern first.
Okay, but he stayed. He stayed through both. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
they extended that angle into there.
Yeah. That's why my dad laughed when people would bring him up, and he's just like, "Yeah, I didn't." He would say, "I didn't need Dink, so no, that wasn't me." But,
Gotcha.
yeah.
A fan is asking, did your dad ever talk? And I do remember this and was a fan about his time in ECW as Born Again.
I remember briefly, like the half him and half Doink. In my head, he was proud of it. Only because, he could prove that, hey, I can still be good without Doink because I'm Matt Bourne. And that comes to where his intelligence comes in. Like, in reality, you might think, okay, that really isn't that big of a deal. Born again, okay, cool, half Doink, but if you think about the depths and the meaning of it, that's deep. I mean, it went deep. He was, all I know is that he was proud of it. He never really said he never wished he never did it or anything like that. I mean, and now that I'm older and I think about like his life and what he went through and him doing that, I'm like, okay, now I see it, Dad. It's clicking. I see why you did it. Because he knew he was good and he wanted people to know he was good. And it wasn't just about Doink. It was just because of who he was as a person that was able to do that,
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Maurice Shortall, my partner on the Cheap Heat podcast network. He says, I think the other Dinks got a bad rap, but we're doing a job, unfortunately, that due to the costume, they could replace sustainably.
Yep.
Which is definitely true. But I would also submit that your dad was definitely the most effective in the role, which considering he pioneered it is not surprising. Wanted to ask your thoughts on Titan Sports filing suit against your dad for trademark infringement long after he was this was touched upon a little bit in the episode, but after he was no longer employed there and the resolution.
Yeah. I think Vince McMahon, we're talking about when my dad used Doink and Vince sued him, correct?
Yes. Trademark infringement for the intellectual property that they owned.
Yes. I think that Vince McMahon thought that my dad was just going to bow down and say, okay, I'm done. I don't think he thought he was going to come back and say, I want my residuals then, because I created Doink. You gave me an idea, but I made it who it was. So where are my residuals? Like, and there it comes again, my dad's intelligence. Who else would have thought to do that? My dad didn't even have a lawyer when he thought about that first. And then he got the lawyer, So I think I can see why they did it, because my dad was using Doink. I mean, he was still profiting off of it. But when you put yourself in my dad's shoes, he thought it was his, even though he probably knew legally it wasn't his. But in his heart, he was like, screw it. I put all myself into this. I'm going to profit off of what I created. And they look like a joke on national TV right now, and they don't even realize it yet. So, I mean, that's my say on it. I see both sides 100% because of the CPA in me and the legal stuff. I totally get that, but then I totally get being emotionally connected to it, and you want what's yours, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Not to focus on the very tragic circumstances of your dad's passing, but more from the perspective of your interactions with him towards the end. Did you get the feeling that he was in a better place? And it sounded like he was, at least from what I've read, optimistic about the future and looking forward to spending more time with his family. Was that your takeaway from that period?
Yeah. I believe that year of 2013, and including, I guess, 2012, because it was only June. I mean, we saw our dad a lot that year. We saw him more than often. But even if he wasn't around, we were always on the phone with him, like once a day. My brother more, he would be on the phone with him for hours. But I mean, he was in a good place. I have memories on Facebook that pop up that my dad talks about. Oh, my kids are my life. I'm so excited to go visit them in good old Elwood City. Like he loved us. I mean, he knew that he made mistakes. And you know, every parent does. My mom's made mistakes. He's like, you know, it is what it is, but he was ready to come and visit more, and he wanted my brother to go home with him when he left, and my brother didn't want to because he was a mama's boy too. It was hard because he was with my mom all the time and my dad wasn't around all the time. So I mean, he was serious about it. He always was serious about it. This was his second chance because he had other kids, and their moms didn't give him a chance like my mom did. You know, even with the bullshit that he went through with my mom. But yeah, no, he was in a good spot. Yeah, the girlfriend pissed him off and triggered him, and he drank. Whatever. Like, it is what it is. You're an addict. You're always going to be an addict. I don't know what it's like to be an addict. I can't talk about it. I don't know what it's like. But in the back of deep in his heart, in the back, and always in his mind, he thought about us kids first, always. So
Being such an eloquent speaker and very knowledgeable about your father, a fan is asking, would you consider doing meet and greets for fans?
I'm only laughing because I never thought anybody would ask me that. I'm not laughing because I think the question's stupid. I would. I feel like it would be out of my comfort zone, not because I'm not a people person, just because I don't know. I feel like my dad should still be here to do those meet and greets. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't the famous person. My dad. But yeah, I mean, if people really wanted that to happen and I knew people would show up and not just like one human, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Interesting. In terms of the strong fan support, and also there's an intersection between the strong fan support and the critical support for your dad being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I think we're not talking about the one in Albany, although that's a very worthy institution that we'll be covering here this summer. But the WWE Hall of Fame, do you see that ever occurring? And if not, why do you think he's not there already, given his career as Maniac Matt Bourne, the territory wrestler, and this iconic, never to be forgotten Doink character?
You know, it's funny you asked that. I've been in contact with the WWE for this issue for about 2 years now. I keep emailing Sue Atchison back and forth. I even tried calling to talk to Triple H. I forget his real name. It's Pat. It's going
Paul Levesque.
Paul Levesque. Is it Levesque, right?
Levesque, yes.
Levesque. Okay. But yeah, I tried to get a hold of him. They hung up on me. I mean, I'm trying. I don't understand why, because I do understand why, because they're probably putting more emotion into it than it has to be, because my dad did do not the best things for the WWF/E's name. Okay. I totally get that. But what I wish that they would do is think about the technical stuff and what he brought to that. I mean, they could still make money off Doink if they wanted to. If they, and you know, it's funny I say this and I said it as a joke, but a little bit has some seriousness to it. I mean, when my friends and some family found out, like, oh my gosh, you're going to be on TV for this. Like, what if even the Dark Side of the Ring producers asked me this question? They said, what would, you know, people from the WWE are going to probably watch this. What would you do if they called you? And I said, called me for what? They said, I was like, I hope not to do taxes because I'm an auditor. I don't do taxes. But they're like, oh no, to wrestle. And I went, to me? They were like, yeah. I said, well, I'm not the most physically fit human anymore. I used to be. I said, but they're like, it's not even about that. It's about the personality and you're natural in front of the camera. And I'm like, you know what? I said, if they did call me and they were serious and they could do a couple things for me, like, you know, when it came, because I have 3 dogs, I have bills, like, I don't know how that would work. I said, but I would do it for my dad. I would try to bring back Doink, but it would be a girl version. I don't know what that girl version would be called, but I know I could do it. I know I could. It's just I don't know. If they did, I would. But I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, especially with the response I'm getting back from them. It's very like, okay, Teagan, I'll let you know, or yeah, you're welcome. I'll keep you updated. And if they never update me, I update them. So,
well, I don't think you're in you know, by yourself in terms of that approach from what people have told me about WWE. But I think if anything, this episode is only contributing to the larger appreciation of your dad's career and causing people that may not be as old as I am to go back and review his huge body of work and get a full picture as to what a absolutely 100% legendary Hall of Fame worthy career he did have. So
yep.
we'll stay tuned for that, and I'm sure eventually it will happen. But before I let you go, I thank you so much for your time. This has been tremendous. I wanted to get you to close on, what would you like the public to remember in 2 prongs about your father? First, as a wrestler, but secondly, as a human being and your dad.
Okay. I would say, as a wrestler, remember him as the passionate one, the one that could do anything that was asked of him, anything, because he loved what he did so much. He was great. I mean, he was one of the best, and I'm not saying Steamboat wasn't, guys. Okay, don't hold me on that. I didn't mean that. But no, my dad was great. And he really did love what he did. He never felt like he was working. So I hope you remember him as the passionate one, even though he had his moments and made mistakes. But at the end of the day, he loved wrestling, and that's what he liked to do. And then as a person, I would say try, and I know it's hard to not think about the drugs and the alcohol, because when it is an addiction, it is a disease. And like I said, I can't really talk much about it because I've never been through it myself, but I've witnessed it. And the person that you become when you do that is not the person that you truly are. Remember him as the lovable man with the great smile, because that smile did mean something. When you see him smile, he meant it. And he was very loyal. And he loved everybody around him. He loved his fans. He didn't like when his fans thought he had dink, though. but he was good. I mean, he was a good guy. Try to remember him like that. And you know, I'll always remember him. Like I said at the end of that episode, he wasn't perfect, but he was my dad, because he was. So, and that's all that matters. So just try to remember the Matt Bourne that you hope
that you think that he is, because I guarantee that that's who he actually was on the inside and outside. So.
Well, after seeing the episode and talking to you here, I can certainly say that you're doing a tremendous job in honoring your father's memory. I'm sure he's very proud of what you're doing out here, and hopefully